But all discussion of governments has to begin with the recognition that the foundational form of government is self-government, which is only going to happen as a result of the gospel. So when the gospel is preached and a man believes and trusts in Christ and his heart is transformed, then one of the things that happens in his life is the fruit of the Spirit begin to manifest. And one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control, self-government. Okay, so no other government can hold together without that self-government. Now, that said, there are three governments among men that were established by God directly himself. Okay, one of them is civil government, which we already talked about, Romans 13. God establishes every authority that exists in civil government. The second government is the government of the family, and God established that in the Garden of Eden. Then the third government is the government of the church. So in Ephesians 4, Jesus ascended into heaven. He gave gifts to men, and he established apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. So church government, family government, and civil government. Those are the three governments that God directly created himself. And those governments are his deacons, his servants. Okay. So when we create governments, if you had a ham radio club, you would have the authority to create the bylaws and create the structure and government of a ham radio club, because that's something you're creating. Okay. Or a chess club or a quilting society. You have the authority to do that. But we don't have the authority to alter the governmental structure of the governments that God himself made. Now, these three governments are on a plane. They're not stacked. They each have different responsibilities. So the civil government might be called the Ministry of Justice. The family is called the Ministry of Health, Education, and Welfare. The church is the Ministry of Grace and Peace. Now, these governments don't depend on the other governments for their existence. I don't need to go to the civil government to get permission to function as a church, right? Because that's not their lane. That's not their responsibility. That's none of their business. Now, one of the things that's striking about this, there's a very good book called Slaying Leviathan by Glenn Sunshine that goes into this. But the Christian faith, for the first 3 centuries of our existence, was a persecuted faith. And that means that all the essential doctrines, the doctrine of the Trinity and the gospel, what you see in the Apostles' Creed, all of the basics of Christianity were hammered out during 3 centuries when we were not created by the civil society. All other major religions were established with the help of the civil government. Christianity took root and flourished in opposition to the civil government for 3 centuries. Constantine wasn't converted until the 4th century. Okay, so that means that baked into the Christian DNA is the understanding that the church exists independently of the state. The state, we don't need permission. We don't need a permit. We don't need a blessing. We don't need to get a license to operate. We have our commission directly from God.